Well, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our UDS webinar. Sorry to keep you waiting a few minutes, but took us a second to figure it out, and we finally did. So, glad you're all here today. I've got with me Paul Schultz. Paul's sitting in here with me today. And
good afternoon.
Got a pretty good group of people. Today. So today what we're going to be talking about is gaining a commitment as a choice. And the reason we're going to be talking about this is that I've had an opportunity to sit in an awful lot of boot camps. We've just finished a 5-day F&I certification course. I've been working in some dealerships, and I've been listening to people close in the F&I office and how they've been doing it. So I thought we'd spend a little time on giving you some ideas and maybe some tools that you can use. It's a specific effective tool that you can use when closing a customer in the F&I office. So let's get started, Paul.
Definitely. Let's go.
So you have, when a customer is looking to purchase a vehicle, they're really trying to narrow down their options, kind of narrow down their choices to make the right one. And, they're looking at things like, which car am I going to buy? Which dealership am I going to buy it from? Are they going to buy or lease, and hopefully to VSC or not to VSC? So they're starting to think about choices, and they're making choices through the whole process. And I want to start out today, and I always, whenever I'm talking about closing in any capacity or gaining commitment, I have to talk about that interview for just a second. I'm not going to dwell on it today, but, if you want to be a better closer, learn to be a better opener. The better we are at understanding the customer's needs, problems, and being able to take our products and the benefits of those products and apply them to the customer's life, the more effective we'll be in the gaining commitment phase of our process. So here's the phrase. Doesn't that make sense? One of the things that I've been hearing a lot is when an F&I person gets to the point in the closing phase or gaining a commitment phase of our process, the customer will have an objection or give a concern, and the F&I person will solve it or overcome it and then ask this question. I've heard that over and over again as a closing statement or a closing question. And, to give you an example, as the customer says, that's really kind of expensive. It's $475, and I really like the VSC, but I don't think I can afford it. And the F&I person says, well, that's not a problem. What we could do is, we could extend that out 6 months, go to a 66-month versus a 60. That would get your payment to $484. You could still enjoy the VSC. Doesn't that make sense? And the problem with that question is the answer could be no. And in this environment, if the answer is no, my question to you is, what now?
Where do we go from no?
Yeah, no's tough. A hard no like that. I've got a question here. Isn't that what we teach? Well, you do see that in some of the scripts. Doesn't that make sense? But I would like you to try to stay away from that. I would say if you're used to using that, and you want to continue to do it, ask for action afterwards. Don't let it hang out there. Say, doesn't that make, you could say, well, if, the 472, we go 6 extra months, we're getting you to 481. Doesn't that make sense? If you agree, I just need your approval right there. I guess that would work because you're asking the customer to take an action. If they don't take the action, then we can ask them, well, what is it about the VSC that concerns you? Is it still the payment that's concerning you? But they're not saying no to us. Whereas doesn't that make sense is a yes or no question. So I hope that answers your question. Let's keep moving forward. There are places, though, where we can ask yes or no questions in the F&I office, and I don't hear them asked a lot. And so I wanted to talk about it just a little bit today. And that's when we know the answer is going to be yes or no, and those are called tie-down questions. And, a tie-down question is a good thing to do to build to the bigger yes, to build to that final commitment. So, it's a great opportunity, and here are some examples of tie-down questions that we can use in F&I. And here's the thing, though. It's very difficult to use tie-down questions in F&I when we're not in the gaining commitment phase if we haven't done a good interview and we don't understand the customer's wants and needs, because we can't relate them. isn't that a feature that could prove valuable with your hectic life, isn't it? And I'm sure you can see how that would be a good fit for you, don't you? If we don't understand the customer, how they're going to use it, earlier you told me, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, that you're going to be, you're driving all the time, you still have your job, you're running back and forth, you really see the value of the VSC. And one of the things that I just want to point out too is that we mentioned earlier that it does come with a rental, so you're never going to be without a car, and I'm sure you can see how that would be a good fit for you, don't you? Or that would be a good, that could be a game changer. When we're able to get the customer to say yes, 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 that leads us to that bigger commitment when we offer them a choice. Now we can use, this as in a no as well for the same purpose. But tie-down questions are good. For some reason in F&I we don't use them. I will tell you this. Well, I got a question. When do you use them?
When do you use tie-down?
Well, answer that question would be after the customer said no, we've asked them to choose products that might make sense to them. They start talking about it, and we're reinforcing the product. We're talking about the features. We're applying the benefits to their life, and then we're using a tie-down question to get them to say yes to you. And that's probably the best place to use tie-down questions in the closing situation.
Would another opportunity be when somebody continuously gives you objection after objection, if you can isolate the objection and ask them, is that the only thing that's concerning you as far as this?
Yeah, sure, and I think that's always a good idea, is to say, other than that, is there any other reason holding you back? Well, yeah, then you could use another tie-down question. Well, let's review those features and then throw it in there. So yeah, that's a good point.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome, Paul. Instead of asking a yes or no question, when gaining a commitment, customers will react more favorably when offered a choice. And it's a better strategy. When you think about it, currently in our presentation, we're offering choices right now. We're saying you can take delivery of these figures, however that might be the best choice for you. You have other options available. We talk about which option do you choose at the end of our presentation. When the customer says they'd like to not roll in anything and they want to go with a base payment, we say things like it's either the way the products are grouped or the cost, which is it for you, which is giving the customer another choice. Customers like those. So let's talk about this a little more specifically. The either or. We want to be able to give a customer an either-or choice, or as Paul says, an A-B type choice. So in this example, if I'm selling fruit and I offer you an apple or an orange, you can either have the apple or you could have the orange, Paul. Which do you prefer? Well, if I'm selling the fruit, either choice is good for me. And I imagine, Paul, for you being a health guy, if eating an apple or an orange is probably good for you as well. But the either-or question has a little science behind it. The either-or choice. And I kind of want to share that with you. Research tells us that we can only think about one thing at a time, and that, which kind of says that we can't multitask. So when you ask somebody an either-or question, you force their minds to consider only your question, and whatever they were thinking about at that moment is gone for a second, and they're deciding. That's even better with an either-or question because they're weighing their options on both of those choices. So it's a very powerful thing. It's a great question to ask whenever you want to take control of the conversation back, is to ask a customer an either-or question. But when we're bringing that into the context of closing, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So here's an example. Mr. Customer, you could put another $2,800 down, and your payment would be $472 with the VSC and the tire and wheel protection. Or you could put $0 down, extend the term to 72 months, and be at the same $472 with the VSC and the tire and wheel protection. Whoops. Well, sorry about that. A little touchy. Which would work better for you? I'm giving the customer two choices in a closing situation and allowing them to choose which one works best for them. We see it with payments and different things. There's a little significant difference here, that I want to talk to you about, and I would strongly suggest you start to incorporate into your either or closes, and that's introduce the component of money. You know, when you're asking a customer and you're giving them choices, include asking cash as for more cash as one of them in one of them. So when you're solving their problem, you know, we tend to want to extend term and do those types of things. Always ask for more cash, even if they've told you previously in the conversation that they didn't have any. But we ask for it in the interview. Remember, in the interview when we talk about cash, we say, you know, if the bank could provide you with more favorable terms, right? Well, this is an opportunity to ask for that cash again. But here's the thing. By putting cash into one of those either or options, the customer will think of that cash as putting more cash down, usually as a negative. As a matter of fact, psychologically, we even think of it as a loss. And that will make us look more favorably on what other options are on the table. So here's two ways to solve that problem, Mr. Customer. Put more money down, still get the VSC and the tire and wheel, or you don't have to put any money down. We extend the term 6 months or a year, and you can still have the VSC and the tire and wheel and stay at the same payment. Which one works best for you? More times than not, they'll go with the option without the money down. And that is giving them two choices, both of them good for the customer, both of them good for us, and it allows the customer to choose.
And even if they don't, they're going to, maybe they'll come to the table with some money, but they're getting into a position where they're going to negotiate you into closing the sale and moving forward as far as selling your option that you're asking them to select at this point. So don't be afraid to ask for cash, especially if you set yourself up early in the introduction and the customer's giving you the indication that they may have some money stashed away.
I just want to reach out to Ashley McConnell, who's on the on the webinar, and I just want to thank her because right now she's the only one that's actually watching.
All right, Ashley.
So thank you, Ashley. We have 16 attendees, and all of them have the screen turned off. But hey,
now we're talking.
Now I'll try harder to keep your interest. I'm sorry. But anyway, I thought it was interesting.
Next webinar, we're going to have one screen that has maybe a bonus on it if somebody's watching.
All right. So anyway, let's move on. The last thing when we're working on in a closing situation and we've asked the customer to make a decision is to give them an affirmation that they made the good choice. So we give a customer a choice, they make the choice, and it's a good idea at that point to say, hey, you've made a good decision or you've made a good choice, and then move on.
Give them the attaboy. You've made a great decision. That's really one of our most popular options is something that you can use. But customers want to be reassured that they're going the right direction. So as you do that along the way, you're going to lead them down the path that you want them to go, as opposed to leaving them kind of hanging.
Thanks, Ashley sent me a little no problem. All right. Paul, it looks like we've come to the favorite part of our webinar, the review. So when gaining a commitment, choose to, one, be better at the conversational interview, discover needs so that we can use those tie-down questions and apply benefits to the customer's problems to help create value. Stop asking yes or no questions. Don't use that. Doesn't that make sense as your closing statement? Offer them a choice instead.
And if you get stuck using that, you find yourself in that position, move on. Don't just stop at the end of that question. That makes sense, doesn't it? All I need is your confirmation here in order to get this going for you. So don't stop, keep going.
And it's important that we talk about, just reiterate why that's important. Because what we're trying not to get is that hard no. Because that hard no is hard to recover. Doesn't that make sense? No, it doesn't. Now we're kind of stuck. So we're trying to stay away from that hard no. Use tie-down questions to build value in your products. We talked about that a little bit. We all did that. If you sold cars, you remember doing that. But for some reason, we get away from it in the F&I office, and there's no reason to. It works very well. Include asking for more cash as part of whatever options you give them. So one of the options should always include extra money, and that'll move them towards whatever the other option. and positively affirm their decision.
Great decision, John.
Thank you, Paul. So, not a long webinar today, but hopefully there's something there that you can use when you're getting into the gaining commitment part of your next presentation. Just a thought, I just finished this book. I wanted to put it out there for you. It's called The Science of Selling. If you're looking for something to read or maybe a book, audio book to listen to on the way to and from work, it's very interesting. It gets into the psychology of selling a little bit and why people do what they do when we ask them to do it. So there you go.
If you have an opportunity, certainly between deliveries, if you get into a slow period or on the weekends, in the morning maybe, get a book like this and read one chapter. That's all you have to do is read one chapter a day or every other day, and you're going to get through it pretty quickly, and it's going to provide you great information and resources you can use in front of your next customer.
I've got another question coming out of South Florida. Are you endorsing the feel, felt, found? And the answer to that question is, sure I have. I think that, I understand how you feel, Mr. Customer. Other customers have felt the same way. However, after taking a look at it a little bit further, they found that it might be a better choice than you originally thought. Do you mind if I share something with you? That's a great transition. I think from a transition perspective, it's been around a long time. It's easy to remember. So, yeah, I think that works. But what I'm talking about is a little different. It's more about asking the customer to make a choice and using a choice as a close. Either choice A or choice B, which works best for you, and getting the customer to make choices versus using a yes or no closing statement.
No question. Anybody that's worked with me as far as coaching, I talk about the A-B. Do you like it A or do you like it B? I don't want to do do you like it yes or do you not like it no. Do the A-B. Think about it in your mind before your presentation, which alternatives you're going to provide for them, so they can make a positive, proactive decision in your favor. Whichever A or B they choose, it's going to be the right one for you.
Any other questions before we move on, before we call it a day? I just want to check the board here. I don't see any other questions.
No other hands up?
No more hands up. If I don't have any more questions or anything from anybody, I see that I got one from, that's it. That's it, Paul.
Thanks very much for participating today. We appreciate your time and hope you can carry this forward to this afternoon to your next customer and help you close on another option and help you make some more money.
Yeah, and if you have any question, if you have a question that you didn't want to ask on the webinar and you'd like to ask me personally, feel free to call me at 386-795-0930 or email me at jtabor@udsdealerservices.com.